Last night was the UFC 305 Dricus Du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya pre-fight press conference. It was more or less a press conference to get people excited that tickets were going on sale for UFC 305. And to be honest, it wasn't that notable of a press conference. There was only one really, notable exchange between Dricus Du Plessis and Israel Adesanya. And of course, it was about the real African comments and the ugly buildup that I think is going to take place for UFC 305. Luckily, we're only a month away from the fight actually happening. But we're going to break all it down. We're going to break down Dricus Du Plessis' trash talk because I believe he is the best trash talker in the UFC. He actually clowned Sean Strickland in a submissive radio interview that we're going to take a look at as well. But there's a lot of discussion and there's a lot of talk in the build-up to this fight about the comments that Dricus Du Plessis has made regarding the real African. And a lot of fans have eaten this up and they keep regurgitating it. And let's be honest about what it really is. It's thinly veiled racism. And I understand that maybe Dricus Du Plessis didn't have malicious intent behind it. I understand that he was trying to promote a fight. But what he's done here, and this is what makes him such a good trash talker, is he's thrown this out there with just enough where he can pull back and say, oh, no, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. I meant this. And he throws all these qualifiers on it. He says, I didn't really say that. And what he's really doing is he's gaslighting Israel Adesanya. He's gaslighting the fans. He's gaslighting everyone about what's really going on here. And I'm going to point it out, and we're going to go through clips that proves exactly what I'm talking about. And I know nobody else is going to point it out. There's a lot of, it's kind of the cool thing nowadays to hate on Israel Adesanya. But we're going to point it all out in this video. We're going to go through all the notable exchanges. We're also going to talk about, there's a lot of talk of Israel Adesanya's height. He's short. Israel Adesanya isn't as tall as he says he is. We're going to break that down in this video as well. But I want to start off with the stare down. And this isn't the only stare down that we're going to take a look at. There was another stare down that a lot of people missed during the press conference. But I want to take a look at this stare down for a multitude of reasons. Because there's some remarks that Dricus apparently made about Israel Adesanya, the whole dog thing. The Israel Adesanya hate has gotten outlandish now that people are making up stories. Yes, stories about Israel Adesanya and animals. That's how much they want to discredit Israel Adesanya. But I want you to take a look at this stare down. This is one of the longest stare downs in UFC history. And I want you to watch Dricus this entire time. Okay, I want you to watch his mouth in particular pause this entire time. Because you'll notice one thing. It's not moving at all. It's not moving at all. Watch this. So Dricus walks up. There's no audio on this apparently, so we'll just talk over it. They almost kiss each other. I thought we were going to have an Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman moment here. If you don't know, they kissed each other back in the day. But look, Dricus doesn't say anything. Adesanya just said something right there. Dricus still doesn't say anything. And this goes on for like a minute and a half, I believe. Dricus never says a word. And by the way, let me pause it right here. People are talking about the height discrepancy here. Like, Adesanya is only like an inch or two taller than him. Look at these shoes. Look at these platform shoes. Look at this hair. That's like 3 inches right there, okay? We'll talk about that in a little bit. We'll break that down a little bit more in a little bit. There's a lot to discuss and unpack regarding UFC 305. But we'll continue watching this stare down. I just wanted to point it out in case the camera angle changed. So, you have him staring down. Intense stare down. This is a big fight. I'm excited for this fight. I know there's some people saying, Adesanya doesn't deserve it. And I get it. I understand. There's no real clear-cut number one contender up until Whitaker starched Ikram Aliskerov and claimed the number one contender status, at least in my opinion, based on his win streak. But you see the stare down. Neither one of them wants to break the stare down. Intense fight. There's some people saying, oh, this is the best stare down I've ever seen. Did nobody see Pereira Yuri stare down from the other day? That's what I don't get. But either way, they're staring at each other. And again, I want it to be very clear. Dricus has not said a word. Dricus has not said a word. Not opened his mouth one time. So they almost kissed each other, but that's about it. Nothing really. Nothing. I want to play it all the way to the end. I think it's another 10 seconds or so. Adesanya says something else there, and Dricus doesn't say anything. So there you go. Adesanya says more, and then Adesanya casts some black magic spell on him at the end. I don't know. Anyway, the point was, you look at that stare down throughout. Dricus never says a word, okay? Let's watch this submissive radio interview, okay? I'll link every video that I'm showing you in this video. I will link it down in the description as always. But this is where Dricus says something about, you know, Israel Adesanya and his dog. And everyone's like, 10-8 Dricus, 10-7 Dricus. Listen to this.
I think he said, don't kiss me. As far as I know, he said, don't go kissing me now. And I said, I'm no dog, so I won't. And, you know.
So everyone's like, yeah, 10-8, 10-7 Dricus. He never said this. Okay, I quoted this on Twitter. I said, funny thing about this is it never actually happened. Good line, I guess, if you're, 13 years old and you don't like Izzy and you don't like that he's one of the greatest of all time in the middleweight division, so you make up, some type of fantasies of bestiality between a fighter and an animal because you don't like a fighter that much, but you can't really discredit their career, so you do that. But Dricus is the king of trash talk. He's bringing this up because he knows a lot of fans will eat this up. So respect to Dricus for bringing it up. The fans will eat it up, fair enough. But then he admits, I didn't actually say anything.
I don't know what he was saying. I wasn't really focused on what he was saying. I didn't say anything. I'm not.
So there you go. I didn't actually say anything. So there you go. I just, that narrative was weird. A lot of people were sending me, yeah, Dricus really killed him here. Well, he didn't actually say it. So he went in the back. He thought this up. He did an interview, and then he said it in the interview, which is still fair play. Get it out there. Get some attention. I'm not criticizing Dricus here. I'm just saying the fans are saying ultimate 10-8. Now, the other clip I want to play from this interview, it's just one more clip from this interview before we get into the actual press conference. He absolutely is the king of trash talk. He points out Sean Strickland being an absolute hypocrite. Listen to this.
But, either one of them, at the end of the day, I'm here to fight the best guys.
By the way, he's talking about Strickland or Whitaker up next for him. He's here to fight the best guys. He's not going to duck any fights. This is what I love about any fighter. Not willing, not sitting on the sidelines and ducking fights and trying to get favorable matchups. But listen to what he has to say about Strickland here.
I'm here to fight the biggest fights, the fights that make the fans want to see. So, in my opinion, if I was how I see this playing out, you cannot not do the Whitaker versus Strickland fight. I think that's the fight that needs to happen. Now, I know Strickland, when we were at the press, he said Whitaker is nothing but a blitz, and it's an easy fight, and now he doesn't want to take that fight.
I swear Dricus is the smartest, most calculating trash talker. Listen to this. And we're going to get to it with the African stuff here in a minute. Listen to what he says here. Oh, Strickland says Whitaker is such an easy fight and that, he would easily beat him at the press conference when he was fighting Dricus. That's what Strickland said. But now he doesn't want to fight him. Well, if it's such an easy matchup, why don't you want to fight him?
No, I know Strickland, when we were at the press, he said Whitaker is nothing but a blitz, and it's an easy fight, and now he doesn't want to take that fight.
So, Dricus shitting on Strickland. Always love to see that. Always love to see that. Giving it back to the bully. Dricus already made him cry. Already took his title. And now he's calling him out for ducking Robert Whitaker, which is the only fight to make for #1 contender status right now in the middleweight division. Now, we're going to take a look at some clips in the press conference. Overall thoughts on the press conference. It wasn't all that eventful. I'm going to show you all the meaningful exchanges, really. And there really was only one meaningful exchange, but I'm going to show you a couple different clips because I want to break it down and talk about it a little bit. But this first clip is Dricus Du Plessis saying, you know what, there's no one I would rather fight than Israel Adesanya right now for my legacy.
Fighting Israel, arguably one of the greatest middleweights ever. And that I wouldn't want to defend my title against anybody else.
So for all the people who said, Izzy wanted Strickland for UFC 293 and there was no one else available. Well, Dricus wanted Israel Adesanya. That's the fight that he wanted because Israel's one of the greatest of all time. So we can debunk that whole narrative about, oh, well, it doesn't matter. He shouldn't be fighting. The champion wanted him. He has a resume. It's a big fight. There's no clear-cut #1 contender. So that's why Israel Adesanya is getting the title shot. But that's not all really that important. This next clip is really just kind of setting up something else. This is where Adesanya talks about taking a long break, which I've talked about in the past. There's more behind that, which he kind of alludes to here. We'll find that out in the future. And he also talks about golf a little bit because that's the one, kind of the best line of the whole press conference that a lot of people are kind of fixating on. I didn't think it was all that funny, but we'll look at it here in a minute.
Longest layoff of my fighting career. 5 fights in 18 months, not as even a fighter, a champion. So it's not just the fights itself, the camps, the pressures of being the king of everything. So it was good for me just to remove myself from the game, enjoy life, took up golf, slowed things down a little bit.
So there you go. Talks about the pressures, the camps, being champion, being active. By the way, people think I'm some kind of Israel Adesanya fanboy. I am a fan of any high-level fighter that stays active and does not duck fights. But you can hear Adesanya kind of alluding to more stuff. you know, I had to get away from the pressures, and it was nice to get away from it because there was more going on behind the scenes, because all he was doing was drinking and partying in the lead up to the Sean Strickland fight. The Strickland sycophants don't want to acknowledge that because they think that somehow devalues Sean Strickland's win. It's still a solid win. He still beat Israel Adesanya, one of the greatest middleweights of all time. But Adesanya needed the time off because he needed to get himself right for this Dricus fight that is now finally happening. And if Adesanya wins, I'm curious where he goes from here. We'll talk about that a little bit in this video as well. Next clip I'm going to show you. And he also talks about golf, which Dricus kind of comes back later, you know, in the press conference and mentions that golf comment because Adesanya mentions it a couple times. This is just Adesanya saying he doesn't care about the belt anymore. He just wants to beat the best fighters, and Dricus is the best fighter right now.
Look, I've been here, bought the T-shirt, done it twice. Yeah, it's not really about that. For me, it's taking on the best warriors from different lands and, yeah, putting them on my record. I've never beaten Dricus Du Plessis, so beating him is what attracts me to this fight, not the belt. So those who have never, ever been in our shoes will never understand that mindset. So, yeah, fuck the belts. I'm coming for heads, and I stick with that.
So there you go. Again, why I'm a fan of certain fighters like this, willing to take the toughest challenges at all time and stay pretty active. He says, look, I just want to beat Dricus. Dricus is a high-level fighter. I want to beat Dricus. I've never beaten Dricus before. Now, this next clip I'm going to show you is actually a stare-down that I don't think anybody really caught. They're asking Steve Urseg something. You know, half the press conference was Steve Urseg in Kaikara, France. But they're asking Steve Urseg a comment, you know, to talk or whatever, asking him for a comment about something. And Dricus and Adesanya start staring down for like 20 seconds. This is the stare-down before the stare-down.
Has it been a bit weird for you after the Pantoja fight?
You see them right here. They start staring down for like 20 seconds before it cuts away.
I mean, you've had such a whirlwind run in the UFC. Have you had a chance to sort of look back on what you've been able to achieve?
Look at them smiling at each other. I'm beginning to think they actually like each other, low-key.
Even how does that fight kind of sit with you right now? When you look back on it, it was super close.
So there you go. Okay, stare down before the stare down. Next clip. Listen to this question from a media member. By the way, the media is so bad. I know there's a lot of people out there who complain about the media because they want them to stir up shit. But, like, the questions were horrible. And I'm not even asking for these, like, drama-filled fan questions. I would love just some meaningful questions. You know, just, oh, Dricus, what do you make of, you know, Sean Strickland saying he was robbed by the Canadian judges and you headbutted him and that's the only reason you won? Or, hey, Adesanya, Strickland says he's waiting out for the next title shot. Is that you want to avenge that loss? Or, you know, just ask him more about, hey, Dricus, you said, you know, some comments before the Brunson fight about how you're the real African. You know, do you think you're more of an African than Israel Adesanya? That's getting on the verge of like fans stirring up shit. But listen to this question from a media member. It's not a horrible question, but I just thought it was a little bit funny, so I figured I'd play it.
You spoke about being the king and the pressures that go along with that. Can you give us a bit of an insight into how mentally exhausting that can be, just holding off a whole bunch of guys who want a piece of you?
Can you talk about how mentally exhausting that is, holding off a bunch of guys who want a piece of you? With all the stuff that people talk about Israel Adesanya, calling him homosexual and whatnot, I mean, they do the same for Dricus Du Plessis. So you got Dricus kissing his coach and kissing, you know, his family members. You got Adesanya painting his nails. You got Sean Strickland talking about dicks every chance he gets. Paulo Costa making some weird remarks. I'm beginning to think the entire middleweight division might be bisexual, but that's besides the point. I think this media member may be bisexual as well. But listen to Adesanya's answer here. He talks about being forced to take a break.
Oh, it still feels that way. It never changes. I'm Israel Adesanya, you know. There's always going to be a target on my back. But experience. I've had experience in this. But again, what we do is crazy. We might seem like invincible people, but we're humans. So again, as the most active champion in history, 5 fights, 18 months, it was just too much for me. And I was forced to take a break, and I'm happy I did.
So there you go. He was forced to take a break. He's happy he did. He was super active, and he was forced to take a break. I think we'll find out more about why Adesanya took a break if he wins this fight. If he loses this fight, well, we may never hear about it. But here in the next clip, we're going to see the actual exchange where it starts up this build-up. And I'm not looking forward to this build-up. I'm happy that the build-up's only going to be about a month long, because this whole African, you know, ethnicity, racial build-up It's just not something I'm looking forward to at all. I think it's corny. I think it's cringy. I think it's, weird that fans really latch onto these type of narratives, but they love these type of narratives. But this is where Adesanya starts bringing up the fact that Dricus supposedly tried to discredit him and Kamaru Usman and Francis Ngannou. Listen to this.
Again, he tried to discredit the Three Kings and say that he's the real true African champion. And I was just like, it's a weird mindset, bro. Like, he came in the UFC. I knew who he was a little bit, but I didn't go, oh, who the fuck's this fake dude coming in? I just said, cool, there's another African in the UFC. But then him discrediting me, Francis Ngannou, Kamaru Usman, that ticked me off a little bit. So that's what started this. But again, I'll finish it.
So there you go. He doesn't like that he tried to discredit him. Now, Dricus will have you believe, and we're going to look at his response here in a second. Dricus would have you believe that he didn't try to do that, that didn't happen, that he didn't try to discredit them. It's all mind games and trash talk. And at the end of the day, it is thinly veiled racism. Do I think that Dricus is actually trying to be racist? Probably not. I don't think it's malicious. I don't know Dricus. I don't think it's malicious. I think it's a calculated decision. He's taken it just to the edge where he can pull back and say, oh, no, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. And let's look at what he really said here in a second, because a lot of people try to twist it and say that's not what he really said when it is what he really said. And they show a clip to really, kind of misconstrue the whole narrative. But we'll get to that in a second. I want to take a look at the best clip from Dricus Du Plessis talking about the, I never tried to discredit him, and also with the golf remark. We're gonna check that out, and then we're gonna look at what was actually said.
Now, for me, calling it tension, there's no tension for me. I get into the octagon and I do my job. I do my business. You can be the biggest asshole in the world. You can be the nicest guy in the world. I'm going out there to kill you.
By the way, great mindset to have.
And I hope you're doing the same to me, because otherwise it's not going to be a good night for you. And as far as discrediting, never discredited anybody. Stating facts. Where do I reside? What's my postal code? Where do I train? Where do I live? Where was I born? In South Africa. Still there, still training. And I won this belt from South Africa. I didn't travel anywhere else. That was the only thing that I stated. So never discredited anybody. But quite frankly, I don't really care about how it rubbed him off the wrong way. I don't care.
I don't really give a fuck where he's from, but I'll show him who he is.
Yeah, whatever that means. I'm glad you took up golf, because that's a retirement sport. I can understand you start playing golf.
Hey man, you do.
So there you go. And then Izzy responds with something that doesn't really matter. So that is the one zinger of the entire press conference. But this is Dricus over and over again. I live in South Africa. I take shits in South Africa. I clip my nails in South Africa. I make out with my coach in South Africa. I train in South Africa. This is all just a calculated way to kind of take it right to the edge of saying that Adesanya or Ngannou or Kamaru Usman are fake Africans. Just because they were born in Africa, but they don't still live and train in Africa, somehow that makes them less African. And all this is Dricus using this to build a fight. Initially, when he said this, and we're going to take a look at the clip, when he first entered the UFC, he looked at this as a way to kind of propel himself up the ladder quicker. Now, he earned a shot, don't get me wrong, but he looked at it as a way to build a fight, a future fight with Israel Adesanya. And it is true that he did say, I'll be the first real African, implying that they are fake Africans because they don't still live there. The fan base doesn't want to admit that. A lot of people don't want to say it out loud because they're scared of getting backlash, because, hating Israel Adesanya is kind of the fun thing to do. But here's the actual clip. Let's take a look at the clip. This is his post-fight speech after, I believe, his UFC debut. It's against Marcus Perez. I believe this was his UFC debut.
Away to that title, because that's ultimately what I want within the next 2 years. Want to be the first real African champ, trained, born, bred in Africa. Congratulations.
So again, he's saying he's the real African. I breathe, I take shits, whatever. Clips his nails in South Africa, so he's the real African, and they're not real Africans. Now we're going to take a look at another clip of Dricus. And again, this is calculated by him. This is what makes him such a good trash talker, because again, he's thinly veiling it. He's just putting it out there just enough where he can walk it back and he can gaslight fans and say, I didn't say that. I didn't mean anything by it. And again, I don't think this is malicious intent. I don't think, Dricus Du Plessis throwing the N-word around behind closed doors, But you know, people acting like Israel Adesanya is the race baiter, Israel Adesanya has brought this up out of nowhere, is just simply not true. So let's listen.
Well, I mean, did those belts ever go to Africa? As far as I know, it came to America and New Zealand. I'm going to take a belt to Africa.
So again, discrediting them, discrediting Usman, Ngannou, Adesanya. They all actually took their belts to Africa. Just because they don't live there on a day-to-day basis makes them no less African than you. And it's just a horrible look for Dricus Du Plessis in general. But of course, the fan base loves these types of narratives and latches onto these types of narratives. We'll let him finish.
I'm the African fighter in the UFC. Myself and Cameron,
I'm the African fighter in the UFC. This is just dumb. It sickens me that people eat this type of shit up. But I understand why, again, I understand why Dricus is doing it.
we breathe the African air. We wake up in Africa every day. We train in Africa. We're African born. We're African raised. We still reside in Africa. We train out of Africa. That's an African champion, and that's who I'll be.
So basically, he's the only real African champion. He's trying to devalue them as Africans, which is incredibly bizarre, but I understand why he's doing it, because the fan base is eating it up. They love these racial narratives. You know, when Dricus says stuff like this, you'll see the fan base come out in droves to defend him. He didn't mean anything by it. He's just speaking facts. He still breathes their air in Africa. But when Adesanya says something like, you know, calls Dricus a cracker, everyone's like, oh my God, Adesanya's using racial slurs, even though nobody in the history of man has been offended by the word cracker. Or Adesanya comes out in the, you know, post-fight interview of Dricus versus Whitaker, and he says the N-word multiple times to Dricus. They're like, how could Adesanya say this? Because it's all a concerted effort to attempt to discredit what Israel Adesanya has done in the sport, and to hate on Israel Adesanya for a multitude of reasons, because he's cringy, whatever it may be. There's a million reasons that I've gone through in previous videos, but that's what it's about. And Dricus is playing this absolutely perfectly, because he still has plausible deniability. He can still sit back and say, I didn't mean anything by this. I'm just speaking facts. I was born here. I breathe the air. I train every day. My training camp's here. My coaches are here. This and that. And meanwhile, Adesanya's in New Zealand. He doesn't care. So it makes him less of an African. I hate that I'm even talking about this. I know there's some people probably watching this video like, Joe, are you really breaking this down for us? But the point is, a lot of fans don't understand this. A lot of fans just go with whatever the popular narrative is. It's the appeal, you know, the appeal to popular opinion fallacy. Everyone believes a certain thing, so it must be true. Adesanya's making up this racial narrative. No. Dricus brought it up originally. Adesanya responded. It's all cringy. It's all corny. It's all a narrative that I do not like. But at the end of the day, it's Dricus brought this up to begin with intentionally, and it was a calculated decision. The last thing I want to talk about is people are discrediting Israel Adesanya. They're like, oh, his resume's horrible. He lost to Sean Strickland. Okay, fair enough. He lost to Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland is a very good fighter, okay? I think he's massively overrated now because he beat Adesanya, but he lost to Sean Strickland, fair enough. But look at the activity. He has a win over Alex Pereira. Literally at like a year ago, a little over a year ago, flatlined Alex Pereira, the only guy to defeat Alex Pereira legitimately in the UFC. Before that, a loss to Alex Pereira where he was winning and got finished in the 5th round. Beat Jared Cannonier, beat Robert Whitaker twice, once finishing him. Beat Jared Cannonier, or I already said Jared Cannonier. Beat Marvin Vettori, lost to Jan Blachowicz, dared to be great, went up, dared to be great, lost to Jan Blachowicz, fair enough. Beat Paulo Costa, beat Yoel Romero, beat Robert Whitaker, beat Kelvin Gastelum, beat Anderson Silva, beat Derek Brunson, beat Brad Tavares, beat Marvin Vettori. He fought legit competition on his way up to a title. Now, granted, the Anderson Silva win, Anderson Silva was washed at this point in time, but still, this was a good resume up until the title, and people try to discredit it like it's not good. He is quite literally one of the greatest of all time in the sport, period. Let alone one of the greatest of all time in the middleweight division. Him and Anderson Silva are right up there with each other. And people try to act like this resume isn't good. People try to act like somehow Adesanya isn't good. And look at the level of activity. September of 2023, April of 2023, November of 2022, July of 2022, February of 2022. I mean, it goes on and on and on. This guy was active fighting the best competition. He called out Yoel Romero when no one wanted Yoel Romero. Yoel Romero was technically on a one-fight losing streak. A lot of people thought he won the fight. Paulo Costa wasn't ready at the time. So Adesanya said, give me Yoel Romero. So the guy deserves to be respected. People, because, you know, for a litany of reasons, one of it being they don't like his personality, they got to try to discredit the resume. There's people out there saying, oh, you know, we talked about it earlier in the stare down here. Let's go to the stare down here at the end. They're like, oh yeah, look how short he is. I think I have this up right here. Look at this. Now keep in mind, Adesanya has shoes on, okay, but they're not like super high top shoes. So he's like an inch, maybe an extra inch on Dricus here. He's literally like 5-6 inches taller than Dricus here, if you actually go from the top of his head. So people are even go as far to say, yeah, Adesanya's not 6'4". You know, he's 6'2", maybe. Because, again, I showed you this. And this isn't really the biggest point I'm trying to make here. Because they act like Dricus and him are the same, you know, height. Because Dricus has got his high heels on, okay? So just a completely bizarre narrative to discredit Israel Adesanya. And let me just say this, and we'll end the video with this. Dricus Du Plessis may very well beat Israel Adesanya. Dricus Du Plessis has found a way to win time and time and time again, and a lot of people did not believe in him. If he loses this fight to Israel Adesanya, I guarantee the fans will make a litany of excuses. I can already see, oh, Adesanya's on PEDs. Adesanya, you know, was using steroids. Adesanya grew a tit. Adesanya this. Adesanya cheated. If it's even remotely close and Adesanya gets a decision, it's going to be a robbery. Mark my words on that. But I wanted to cover this entire thing because there was really a lot to discuss regarding UFC 305 with the press conference happening yesterday. But overall, press conference wasn't that entertaining. The whole African narrative, I hope it dies off. I hope both of them stop talking about it as much as physically possible. We'll see. That remains to be seen, but I wanted to cover it in this video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for watching.